Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian. I'm the host of the Left of Greg show. You're going to be watching the video version of our audio podcast. Please, guys, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content on there if you're already a subscriber, and a better way for us to get you guys some more stuff. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. Check out our links down below to get a hold of us and to actually find out more places where you can get more information about this. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at HBPRNA. Remember, all these cases that we discuss and all these discussions that we have are through the lenses of what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. So please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and we hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. All right, so on today's episode, Greg, just you and I, but today we're going to actually be trying to answer a question that was posed. Not directly to us in a hypothetical question, but the question is from Chief Hank Stawinski. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Of the
No, you're not.
Stawinski. Oh, Stawinski.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there we
Chief
go.
Hank Stawinski of the Prince George's County Police Department. And the question he said to the media is, my detectives have to answer is, how does a confrontation lead to a homicide in 15 seconds? So that's what we're going to talk about today, specifically about rage. But to give a quick background on the situation we're discussing, just this past Sunday on November 3rd at a very crowded Popeyes restaurant in Maryland, I think right outside of DC there, 28-year-old Kevin Davis was stabbed to death by another customer who confronted him about cutting in line. So he was stabbed over cutting in line on these new chicken sandwiches that Popeyes is on another limited run on. So real quick, the details of the case, obviously this just happened, so this is what's been reported in the news so far. One report in a newspaper said that Davis, the victim here who was stabbed to death, had been what they described as methodically cutting his way through the line for about 15 minutes before the suspect confronted him at the counter. And then what the chief had said is that only 15 seconds elapsed from when the altercation started to when it ended with the stabbing. And so a couple things, there was no evidence that the suspect and the victim knew each other. And they found a knife in the victim's possession after the stabbing, but investigators don't believe he brandished it during the confrontation. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to get into. And I think it's, just to go into probably what everyone's curious about is what the chief actually mentioned in his news conference was it's something we have to question in terms of how we're interacting with one another as a society is how does a confrontation over cutting in line lead to a death? That's a great question. I'm gonna kind of admonish him slightly, being a law enforcement professional for so long, that I'm sorry, you're the one standing in front of the damn cameras. You're the one that's supposed to be able to explain this to everyone, not confuse us and not scare us. But that's where we can come in, I think, and explain just exactly how these things happen. Not in terms of why, in terms of motive and all that, but this is how these things can occur. So I think, is that a good way to frame this discussion?
It's perfect. And the only words you didn't use, Brian, is flash to bang. And
yeah, and
you
we
get
were
what
right
I'm
because I
saying?
knew we were gonna. But
yeah, and we're gonna. But look, just in the last couple of weeks, how many episodes have we seen? The female hit with the blender and seriously injured, teeth knocked out, horrible photos that are online in an argument over a sandwich or the quality of her milkshake or whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what it is. What the problem is flash to bang. And flash to bang is relatively zero nowadays.
and
For
real
some
quick,
very simple reasons that we can talk about.
yeah, and real quick, just to understand the term flash to bang, that's used in a lot of different ways to describe things. So you could
Yeah,
think of when you see the lightning flash, and then when you actually hear the thunder, right? That's flash to bang. It tells you how far away it is. The longer it takes from you to hear that bang from that flash, the farther I am away from that incident. Well, that's no different than a lot of times you can see the muzzle flash of a rifle, then hear the bang of it going off. That tells you how
precisely.
far away that person is that's shooting at you. Is a good rule of thumb. But what we mean is the flash when this incident starts to the bang. Bang is that this guy's getting stabbed, there's a fight, there's a homicide, there's whatever the situation is. So these are happening relatively quickly. So this
Yep.
flash to bang is so fast,
Yep.
15 seconds in this case.
Nanoseconds.
But
Right.
what we get into, and that's where a lot of A lot of people do training at that part, that flash to bang, right? Which is why I included the detail of apparently this guy has been moving through the line for 15 minutes, because what we deal with is everything obviously prior to that. But I think that's a good way to frame the discussion
No,
today.
no, no. And Brian, I richly, freely, and openly will make up words to fit what I need to fit, and I'll steal them if I have to. And the idea is
Exactly.
that everybody in our audience understands immediately flash to bang. They
Yeah.
get it. Okay,
Yeah.
you get what I'm trying to say, and you gave this detailed clinical response to it. But I'm a street guy, and when I come up with that term, and it's certainly not a term borne out by scientific study and
No,
rudimentary brother,
it's just a
but we didn't need it. We need it
no.
on the street because
Yeah.
people need to understand how quickly these things can happen. So I think first, let's separate anger from rage.
Okay.
Anger, uh, uh, like rage, is an emotion. Anger, a strong, physically felt emotion, of course. We talk about people seeing red, the heat of passion, all stuff that we train to look out for in our classes. You know, it's things that'll
Right.
impact your environment, things that'll impact your baseline, and things that you have to account for and attend to. And they're all caused by brain chemistry. So
Yes.
the important thing for our listeners to understand is they occur due to brain chemistry, whether it's a real or an imagined challenge to our baseline or to our environment. So whether it's actually happening or it's not doesn't matter to your brain. Your brain equates a challenge or a threat in the same manner and then starts pushing out chemistry to prepare you for the response. Now,
Right.
rage is anger that's uncontrolled and uncontrollable. And
And
so we
the
liken it to that intermittent explosive disorder
yes.
clinically because you cannot control. Once you get to that threshold, and the reason I wanted to bring that, Brian, and I know you're champing at the bit to hit on that,
Yeah.
we have to make sure everybody feels anger, but it rarely goes to rage.
Yes, that's a great point, because that rage would then be tied to a very primal reaction. All right, would
Exactly.
that be a good
Exactly.
description? I think because rage,
That's a
just as you
perfect description. Yeah.
said, is it's uncontrollable. So every, like you said, everyone experiences anger. Every human being experiences anger at some point in their life. Very times does that lead to rage, where you cannot control your emotion.
Exactly.
And I would also, since we're on the topic, let's talk about both sides of that coin and where that comes from. So rage, like road rage, or rage in this case that we're talking about at the Popeyes, where all of a sudden this flash to bang, that primal reaction is there actually for good, right? It's originally there for survival situations where I need to
Exactly.
overcome.
Exactly. So we have to remember always a clinical, scientific, historical perspective. We try to do all of them. So whether we remember the term going postal, not used
Yep.
that much anymore. Okay,
No.
but that started off from the workplace violence, post office
Post
shootings.
office. Yeah.
Then we had drive-bys. Then we had road rage. Then we had school shootings. Then we had
Yep.
disgruntled employees again on killing sprees. Then we had family annihilators. It's this Mobius loop of generationally acting out based on this out of control anger. So control, therefore, is a locus, a center, a point. And all of us acquiesce, all of us understand as humans in society that there is this central point of a location for what is socially acceptable behavior. And then what happens is when we feel challenged or threatened in our environment, rage is anger spun out of control, instantaneous, that we can't slow it down because we don't identify the cues pre-incident. So therefore, training can help us identify it. And then anger is okay. Anger
Yeah.
helps settle discussions. And anger doesn't mean violence. It can foment violence, but it doesn't mean it.
Right.
And you see that even online today, if you go online, I'm sure there's anger management courses everywhere. Even in small town Gunnison,
Yes.
the judges handing out have to go to anger management, and then there's some check in the box course somewhere. But what you don't see is you don't see rage management
No,
courses.
'cause that's
So we have to separate anger from rage. Then we have to separate rage from the behavior, because one can be filled with rage and then act out, and that behavior is the acting out.
okay. And you brought up, and I'm taking notes here. So
It's
because you brought up a couple good things. but
Thank you.
also when you said
That's it.
we can't we can't slow it down. So
No,
that's a
no.
great distinction. Like you started off with the term, separating anger from rage, right? We all
Yes.
feel anger, but like you said, hey, we can slow that down. We can back that off.
Yep.
We can talk someone down who's angry. When you reach that point where you become overwhelmed by the situation, and you turn to rage, your brain is acting primally. It thinks
So
it's
you
in
don't turn to
a
rage. Rage turns you. You're right. You're
the
right.
better
You're
a
right.
better description. A better
Yeah, yeah,
description.
yeah. No, you're
When
right.
you get to that point where your mind thinks that you are in that survival situation. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why you go to that rage.
Yep.
It's you're now in that situation. And I know that's the one of the books we recommend is that Why We Snap. We talk about
Yep.
rage. The guy I wrote it down. R. Douglas Fields. He's a neurobiologist,
Yep.
and who tried to write that and explain to rage, and goes, look, there's these different reasons why it happens, and there's different triggers, but it's a very primal trigger. So I think I like that we can't slow it down. So that being said, at Flash to Bang, how does this happen? How are people standing in line for a chicken? What are the
Yeah.
because there's no one thing that makes this occur. What are the contributing factors that lead that like we always say, we got two trains on the track, right? How do they actually intersect?
What's the nexus?
What is the nexus where it leads to in what? Because I look at these and go, well, I'm sure this occurred over a longer period of time of 15 seconds.
Yeah. But you hit on it. First of all, you're and folks that are listening, folks that are watching, we jump around because that's how humans are. We have these flashes of emotion, and then the questions, and then response. And all you got to do is just sit back for a minute and pay attention. Rage is almost never a primary emotion. Okay.
Right.
Anger becomes the primary emotion, and then rage is never this knee-jerk reaction to a provocation. There's always events that precede it. There's always emotions that precipitate it. And if you can identify those cues, then through training, you can curtail the behavior, or at least be prepared for it. Like people could have read it in the line. So you said something that was hugely important. We'll go back to near the beginning where you said that this guy had been moving up and sneaking in line and jumping ahead of people in line for a long time. So first of all, other people could have seen that if they understand baseline. But more importantly, that guy was getting bolder and bolder. And to talk about Boulder, Colorado, the kingdom of Boulder, people every year come to Colorado and they want adventures, and they die taking a selfie. They die on the roads because they think four-wheel drive means you can go the speed limit with snow and ice, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what causes that, Brian? And I would tell you and the chief that every single time you survive an incident, your brain chemistry goes, whoo, I got that. I can do it again. Yeah. And each time that you do it, you get more careless or reckless because you're doing it without measuring the emotional toll and the physical toll and the chemical toll in your brain.
So
and
that
so
boundary,
this guy,
boundary changes every time.
So what happened is as he was moving forward and nobody challenged him, now all of a sudden he gets the person that stabbed the young guy to death. He gets to that point going, damn, nobody's going to challenge me. And the adrenal cortex is pumping and the drugs are going, and we'll talk about that in a minute, the epinephrine and the norepinephrine, but they become virtually an insurmountable barrier. And now he's ego driven going, hey, I'm almost there. I'm going to do it again and again and again. External arousals such as fear provoke anger. So here he's feeling a little bit of fear, but not the kind of fear that would make us slow down on the accelerator. Not the kind of fear that would tell us, hey, be careful out on the ice, it might be thin. The kind of fear that makes the episodic saliva go away and we get a little bit excited and we want to say, and another thing, just like in a domestic violence incident. You see what I'm saying? So there's this sort of crescendo of coma cocktails in the brain that are doing one of two things. And you've got the adrenaline and the noradrenaline, the epinephrine and the norepinephrine. And what's their idea? Their idea is to present to you a menu of available choices. So one is meant to desensitize you so you can get your head lopped off, so you can just kneel down and take a shot to the back of the head. And we've seen the videos and we've seen the people, and people go, how would you do that? Because part of your brain chemistry tells you submit. Just don't fight it. Just go numb. And then the other part of it tells you, okay, I'm ramping up. I'm not going to take this. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight. And here you have a situation where the guy's, the stabber, the aggressor, the assaulter, he's up at this threshold coming in. And the guy at the front of the counter probably says something like, and they'll review this and figure it out. And he goes, hey, where do you think you're going? Okay, one, now that starts putting those emotions going, right? And now that fear, that expectancy, that arousal, that anger has to be answered. And before anything, flash to bang is gone. Because remember, you spent 15 minutes getting to flash to bang, but this poor chap at the counter doesn't know it. And the next thing is you talking to me and the knife comes out. The next thing is we have the rage manifests itself in an episode of violence. And while we can accelerate the rage in nanoseconds, we can't come off of that accelerator in the same amount of time. We can't.
Okay, so I'll put it. I'll try and put it in what my perspective would be. So let's start with, like you just said, the guy who's trying to cut in line.
Yep.
So he's kind of somewhat, because you liken that to people dying, taking selfies, and not and out, trying to do more than their performance allows on the road, and they get in a car accident.
Human performance limits you, but they exceed their expectation or their training. You're
So
exactly
I would
right.
liken that to after my first deployment to Iraq, heavily kinetic, horrible time. I came back and I was still in the military, and I was still getting that adrenaline dump and excitement from all the training that I was going through. I went out and I bought a Harley, right? So, and I would ride my Harley in Southern California, and there's a few places, windy roads, that it's fun. You get down, but I rode my Harley. Now, I actually bought a Harley because that was actually my mechanism to not buy a street racing bike, because I knew I would kill myself.
And to not window pane blotter acid,
exactly.
Which was still illegal. So the motorcycle was much cheaper than just mainline and heroin.
Yeah. But I'd hit corners, and then, some of them I remember I went and I'm going into this corner and I'm going, oh crap, like I'm hitting that cortisol's hitting, and I'm hitting, like, I don't know if I'm going to make this turn. And I lean hard. I mean, I'm talking like sparks flying out the back from my pipes dragging on the ground, and boom, I pop up and I hit that corner faster than I ever thought possible. And I was like, man, it was exciting. Obviously, I got a little adrenaline dump. I had that dopamine afterwards. I was feeling good. I was like, damn, I hit that. So that now, the next time I come across, I went, wait a minute, I hit it at this speed before. Like, I know I'm good up to that point. So where the first time I approached that turn, it was at 20 miles an hour. Then, I got a little bit more comfortable on my bike. It was at 30. And then that time when I was going too fast, I hit it at 40 and still made it. So now 40 is now my baseline. So I would liken that. Would that be similar to what the guy cutting the line is doing?
So let's do two things real quick. First of all, as a sniper, but by the way, glad you didn't just start smoking the glass dick. I mean, you could have been on crack coming out of that, and some people were, because they don't understand how those emotions overtake us. And this is why we got to do better for our veterans, for our law enforcement and first responders, because Brian, they felt the same way that you did, and it's all about emotional maturity to a point. So let's talk about this for just a second. One, as a sniper, you understand that you have to zero your weapons and your optics, true?
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise,
what would happen if we have 3 rounds and we're trying for minute of angle shots? What would happen if I chased the shot group rather than tactically and technically just did the math and walked on my crosshairs and my point of impact, point of aim?
You're never actually going to get to a point.
You're never going to find it.
You're never hit the target you want to hit.
So you're going to chase, and you're going to spend a lot of rounds, a lot of time, a lot of money, and never get from here to there. That was the Harley Davidson. That was you continually chasing that adrenaline rush. And look, folks, I know the different names for the chemicals, but I'm not going to sit here and talk about electrochemical neurotransmitters just to impress you. I'm going to talk about that emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is the result of facing and overcoming obstacles. Right. And you did that. But the problem was you were still immature. You didn't have resilience yet. Resilience is doing that well, doing it over and over, but learning lessons that you can apply to the next obstacle. So what you were doing as that young Marine is you were chasing that shot group. And your bosses at the time said, listen, we're going to have more motorcycle training, and you can't drive a motorcycle on post without training, and you have to wear an orange vest. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you have to wear a helmet. Well, was that a measured response to your emotional maturity?
No, it was actually, but that's great that you brought it up, because they do require that to register that on base. And I always tell people it's the greatest thing you could ever go through, because it actually teaches you the dynamics of a motorcycle, which made me drive faster into those corners.
Yeah, but you know what they missed, Brian? You know what they missed? Right. And we tell chiefs of police and industry leaders this all the time in the boardroom. What you lacked as that young Marine, and what they lacked, is an effective de-escalation strategy.
Right.
So whether we're talking about from stress or anxiety or suicidal predisposition or homicidal fascination, what happens on the street and what happens with our young coppers on the street now is you are titillated and excited by these repeat exposures. But the problem is nobody sits down and therefore puts them into context so they become resilient, so that scar tissue grows into something that you can use to de-escalate, where you're going, okay, I'm going 141 miles an hour in this pursuit, and while this is cool as shit, I need to slow down because I've exceeded my brain's ability to process my environment, and I may kill myself, I may accidentally kill the suspect, or I may spin out of control in an intersection and kill society. Do you get it?
Yeah. So I see how those are related, those two
Yep.
situations you just talked about. But then what is that? How does that lead us into rage? Because that can go into obviously performance, and you talk about emotional maturity. And so I'm assuming what you're getting at is that someone if your body elicits that rage response very quickly for these
Yep.
situations, you lack that emotional maturity.
Yeah, so psychologically, Freud would go back and tell you that anger and then rage, because he made sure that he had different ice cube trays like I do for both of them. On the shoulders of giants, I think Freud stole some of my stuff. Uh,
Only you.
Can you imagine that?
Only you would accuse even a guy who died before you were born. I'm pretty.
I believe it, that bastard. But the idea is that whenever you perceive real threat,
Perceive real threat. Yeah.
Either of those, because they're two
Yes.
sincerely different things, mentally, emotionally, physically. What happens is you feel that your ego is under attack. So that guy that stabbed and acted out, you're thinking, are you defending him? Well, I'm defending him from the Elmer Fuddyan proposal,
Yeah.
from the I hate when people talk about reptilian and triune brain and all.
Yeah.
None of that matters. We're not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
What happens is none of that works. What happens is all of a sudden my ego is threatened, and I go, "You think that's funny?" Do you remember what's the film with Joe Pesci where he's sitting there and talking about I amuse you, and everybody, we don't know we don't know if Goodfellas, we don't know if he's going to shoot you or he's going to hug you, if it's part of the joke. But what happens, you feel your ego is being threatened and you lash out, and there's nothing in between. So hence the flash to bang. So training and emotional maturity, and for example, when I talk about training, people go, okay, you hit the training button. Yeah, but you're not listening to me. Training allows me a strategy, part task training or practical application. And if I can't get it at home or from a priest or from the soldiers or from the police academy, I don't have it. And therefore, when I go into a situation where all of a sudden I feel my ego is being threatened and the chemical cocktail is brewing, I've missed those anticipatory signals, and therefore I'm right in the incident and I'm going to fight it out.
Okay.
If I know that it's coming, I can do something to stop it. And so can you, Brian.
Okay, so let's go to the guy, and I think that we're doing this a couple days after this happened. I think they now arrested him, and there was he was there with the female. They fled in a vehicle after that. But let's put ourselves in his shoes, right? Because let's say you're standing in line for that chicken sandwich, right? So what's going, because we've already talked about it, but let's kind of what we can psychologically from a cognitive performance perspective go, what was going on in his mind as while he's standing there waiting for his food, because he's standing in line.
So let's do this though, Brian. I'll challenge you on this one. It's not fair to say challenge because you're such a bright guy anyway, but you saw this coming. The last question I would pose to you first, and chief of police and coppers out there and lawyers, is this suspect, and I don't know his name yet, Brian, but was he in the right frame of mind, or can he claim like diminished capacity? The fact that he fled, the fact that he left, means he knew right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what he had done is wrong, and he knew he couldn't unring that bell. If it were you or I, and I'm not the Jean Valjean defense, if it were you or I, and we knew, of course, I was going to hit right now.
Is that Jean Valjean calling?
Yeah, it's him. No, it's actually Freud's estate
going,
how dare you? How dare you, sir? But listen to me, Brian. If you knew that you did something wrong and you looked around and said, oh my God, what have I just done? You would have stayed at the scene, tried to give this guy first aid.
Right.
Oh, I can't believe that I did that. But this guy wasn't armed with that emotional maturity. This guy was still riding the high from the adrenaline, and the guy chose to escape. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So
Mm-hmm.
that's self-preservation, and self-preservation means he was still thinking during the incident. So I know it sounds dichotomous, but it's not. Brain chemistry is going to force you to do that rage, but you're in charge of keeping those under control. So it's your fault. So he's sitting there at line. Okay?
It's your responsibility.
It's your responsibility as a human in society.
Right.
So he's sitting there, and all of a sudden, he's going, ain't this about a bitch? I'm already to the front of the line. I've made it through all these other folks.
He's been waiting in line
right
for a
there.
while.
I can see it. I can smell it. I can taste it. And if anybody's been to Popeyes, this new commercial on Popeyes where they're coming up with that Thanksgiving Cajun turkey, okay? Yeah. Every single time that I see that, I leave the office in Rogue Manor West and I raid the kitchen. You get what I'm trying to say? Because I can't stop it. Because those chemicals are
And now imagine if you could smell it.
He can smell it, he can see it, he can feel it, he can taste it. And up until that point, he's bested every challenge. I'm sure that somebody else in line said something to him. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Here's what
but his resistance built up and his adrenaline built up.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So obviously we weren't there. We haven't seen any video.
No.
So this is a hypothetical question. Is it likely that he saw this person throughout the time he was standing in line, cutting line, or do you think he was right there, standing there, and then all of a sudden this guy jumps in?
Yes. And so now the victim may have seen him before this, and the victim may have come up with the strategy. I'm the guy that's going to tell you something.
Yeah. Well,
The suspect just saw this color and didn't identify with anybody as a human. That's why it made it easy for him to stab. And of course, this wasn't his first rodeo. I'm sure that when they go back, they'll see that this person has made poor choices in other aspects of their life. But all of a sudden, now you're confronted with that. Your father, your stepfather, the school teacher, the person that molested you. Do you get what I'm trying to say? The unfaithful spouse. That's what the stabber faced. All of a sudden, that person took on all of those emotions.
Well,
and therefore it became inevitable that they were going to stab.
Well, then that's the reason why I asked, is because he's standing there waiting in line. He's going along like he's supposed to.
Yep.
And he's, and the reason why I wrote hypothetically is he watching this guy cut in line and getting angry at him before it's even his turn. So that way, when the guy cutting in line all of a sudden jumps in front of him.
Yeah.
Going,
but
I mean, I understand that. I'm just saying, what does it go into? If I'm flying the wall or a person behind that counter or someone in there watching this situation going down, would I be able to identify these things in each of these or the situation as a whole and go, hey, you know what? This is leading to a really bad place. Let's go to a different Popeyes.
Yeah. And Brian, you hit it all right there, but back up just a second and slow it down. Give yourself the gift of time and distance. Once you saw that line, once you saw the tensions rising, you as a trained human behavior profiler would have said that. You'd have said, McKaylee, we're going somewhere else.
Exactly.
Because you would have predicted that this was a likely outcome.
Whether it was going to die or not, it was still going to be.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're going to get robbed or somebody's going to throw a punch or somebody's going to get. And you absent yourself from the situation, you increase your chances of a long and happy life.
Right.
But another person that was detached from the situation could have seen it coming from behind, for example, and seen the whole thing unfold and would have said, hey, this is probably bad. Dial 911 and hover your finger over the remaining one, right? But I think the actors lacked a sufficient amount of situational awareness. So even though cues were present, they missed the cues. Your untrained, uneducated brain. And yes, I am challenging the folks out there. If you don't learn it in school and you didn't learn it at home and you're not learning it from church, you don't have it. So therefore, when it occurs to you, it's already too late in the process. And you got one guy at rage and one guy thinks that he can still talk it out. And what happened? And this whole thing about, well, the other person was found with a knife. Do you honestly think when you're a jet till the end? You think this was West Side Story? This happened in nanoseconds. And that's where the sheriff called it out, or the chief of police. 15 seconds is way too long. I'll guarantee you it was much less time than that. Nobody stood there and beat their chest and said, well, I'll tell you this, hey man, the knife was out and the knife was there. And that's what we have to avoid as a society. And the way to fix that is training. And part of that training has to include empathy, a coping strategy for the bad guy, and empathy for society to sit down and go, listen, we can talk this out. We don't have to fight this out.
I think that, and I think to bring up again what he said is, people like to say, as a society, where are we going? Well, okay, well, I'm gonna counter with
Yep.
every other statistic that says our society today is safer and our life is easier than any generation before.
Ever before. Ever.
So
You can
let's
do
start.
more with your phone
Yeah,
than
let's
NASA astronauts could
the
do when
the
they were going to land on the moon.
the fact you never would you never heard about this before, even though it was still happening. You know, everyone goes to
Yep.
school shootings. Well, go to 1925 Bath Township in Michigan. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying? So it's been going on for 100 years. But so
Yep.
I try to do my best to stay out of those arguments. But the idea was what you brought up was those people standing in line. I want to put myself in those shoes because the thing you brought up, without training, you don't have the file folders, right? So
Yes.
even though we see this on the news, even though we see road rage, people getting killed over parking spots, but that's not new. That's not new to me. Like, you go in neighborhoods in Chicago where I grew up. In the winter, you go out and dig your car out, and people put chairs or cones or something out there. If you go move that chair and you park in that
Yep.
person's spot, your
Just
tires
like
are getting
Detroit.
slashed. That there's no.
But Brian, it can be a death sentence. Dude, nowadays,
If they catch you,
just like in the old days, if you saw somebody doing that, that can be a death sentence.
if
And
they
then you
catch
would look
you
at your neighbors and go, "What? Come on!"
if they catch you in the act, if you're lucky, you just get your tires slashed while you're
Or a
gone. They
beating.
come there,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But here's the thing. So all that stuff does happen. But I think the no file folders, right? So because
You're
even
exactly
though we
right.
see it on the news, even though we read about it, even though we don't equate those things when we're in there in the moment, to go, what could this possibly turn into?
Yeah. So,
Right?
but the training, you're
Yeah.
still you're spot on, and I don't want to miss that. The training is both sides of the coin. The training is for the people to be able to express what's happening emotionally without doing it at the end of a knife. And the training is also for society at large to learn the pre-event indications of violence, so you understand that these things are about to occur and you can de-escalate them. So if I was going to talk to the guy with the knife, I would say, hey, buddy, training is going to teach you to identify these thoughts and feelings inside of you that are always preceding your rage attacks, because I guarantee this wasn't his first. Rising irritation, tensing
Right.
your neck muscles,
Yeah.
shallow breathing, tightening of the chest, showing of the teeth, all the stuff we teach in class. I would
Yeah.
teach him how to identify those and then circumvent them, how to change his brain's chemistry. On the other side, I would teach the guy behind the counter. I would teach the people in line, because they're all culpable, right? They knew or should have known that this was occurring, and they should have been able to take a look at this situation just like a cop or a first responder or a soldier or anybody, Brian, a politician. They should have been able to say, listen, if I act first and act fast, I might be able to save a life. And you and
Right.
I know that that's not happening. We're not doing enough to identify why the training is important. We think that adding more security or adding armor guard or adding an alarm to my car is going to solve the problem, and it's not. And as a matter of fact, technology is exacerbating the problem because we're not dealing with it on a human level like we are talking about it today.
Yeah, and that gets into, obviously, if you're getting a high level of training, you should be able to identify some of these things, and you need to learn how
Yep.
to pick up this. And I always put myself in that person of the shoes, standing in there, and
Yep.
and I think you just go back to, all right, is this something I can identify, for one,
Yep.
right, before it happens, and two, is it worth my life to stick around and get a chicken sandwich and run the risk of something like this happening? Because like you just said, yeah, it's easy
Yeah.
for me to go in there and go, hey, you know what, let's go somewhere else, because I've seen how bad it can get.
You've seen
And
it.
it ain't worth it.
Seen it.
And I got like a family and stuff now, so I got things to lose. So I don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't. I love you, Brian, but don't flatter yourself. There's nothing there.
I've got
Listen.
cardboard box is
let
now
me equate it with this. Let me equate it with this, Freud.
What did Freud call when he called you there a minute ago?
I have the text. I'll show my listeners, my loyal listeners. Listen, we bought the Powderhorn Ranch, Powderhorn, Colorado, sight unseen from Detroit. Shelly and I went out. There's a long story. I'll write about it one day.
You can find it on the interwebs if you're good on the Google machine. I found it years ago. So
so it's $1.4 million. We funded $140,000 with $1,400 down and 38% interest. But we had the ranch for 13 years, and it was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
So this first look at the ranch, I'm looking with first look glasses, and everything is beautiful. Oh my God, it's a pool and a jacuzzi, and there's 14 guest cabins and this, and the outbuilding and the lodge and the hall and all. limitless future shades. Then I go into the first cabin and there's a rat-eaten wall and the mouse crap and the toilet doesn't, flush. And then I got to get a Class C and a D water license before I
then you
open
got
and
yeah.
install a partial flume and do all this. So all this stuff, all of a sudden, like reality's hitting me. Yeah. So I'm under the pool and trying to figure out why the pool filtration system isn't working and it's leaking all over hell. And remember, you're an hour from the closest paved road and an hour from that paved road to town. So you have to have advanced critical thinking. You're going to fold. You're going to die. And I'm laying under there and I see these holes in this huge PVC pipe. And each one of these holes looked like some angry gnome hacked into the piping system. So I called the previous owner, who's a gem. And Gem is a good call sign. And I say, hey, what maniac hacked into those lines? And he said, every year at the end of the year, because we get so many below 0 days, I would take a drill with whatever bit that I had in the top of the toolbox, and I would drill through all the lowest points in the piping to let that water drain out so it wouldn't crack the pipe. And then every year I would get JB Weld and have one of these kids go under and patch that hole. Okay,
Oh my gosh.
so listen to me.
What?
You are given this amazing thing inside of your skull, and I want you to think of it and equate it to a toolbox. And in there's things like a Phillips head screwdriver that is completely different than a standard screwdriver. But if you take a 2-pound sledge and that Phillips, it can be a chisel.
Yeah.
So what happens is human beings that aren't being trained in what those tools are for are choosing those tools because they're available in the moment. And in that moment, if you choose that 2-pound sledge and that Phillips head, it's going to break when you need it the most. And that the ashtray you're making for your mom on Mother's Day or whatever is going to come out looking like ass. And what happens is training helps us unpack what's going on in here. And then we can use those tools in a real setting or in a virtual setting. And guess what? That's learning. So that's how we build emotional maturity. And then when we go out in the real world and try it for real, that's what builds resilience. So these people in that Popeye's chicken were so focused on the end state, getting the chicken and going home, that they couldn't see what was right in front of them. And these two characters didn't understand that the toolbox were already in motion and they were on that inevitable 2 railroad trains coming, just like the old locomotives were coming. And there was these valuable seconds ticking away, the gift of time and distance, where somebody could have lived through it. So you admonished the chief earlier for saying, hey, listen, you're supposed to be the guy that knows. Don't use hate, death, and fear. Don't come up and scare us.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But I also challenge society. You knew better. You knew better.
I would agree with that.
You stood there, you saw it, you heard it, you watched it play out, and you let it go too far. And now you can't unring that bell. That to me is the saddest part of this story. Somebody died that didn't have to die over a chicken, over a sandwich, over lunch or dinner.
And I would agree with that. And I think that, all right. So, you talk about responsibility, right? Because there's a difference between, it's someone whose fault is it and who's responsible for it, right? There's a lot of things in your life you can't control that aren't your fault. Things happen that you didn't cause it. But
that's why they call
them
accidents, right?
Yeah.
Right?
But then when does it? But it comes to a point, and since we're talking about resilience and rage and all this different mental performance, it's like, hey man, it might not have been your fault that an event occurred, but you're responsible for your own safety. You're responsible. In some sense, even in a legal sense, for the well-being or care of other members of society, right?
Yes,
to the point where you have to.
The Bible says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Of course I am.
But
of course I have that responsibility.
But even in a legal sense, if you do nothing, you can, in some places, be held responsible for certain for not.
And just as many laws as there are like that, there's Good Samaritan stuff that says I can look the other way and keep going.
Don't have. Right? You're not expected to, jump on someone who has a gun or a knife or whatever. But at some point, everyone in there accepted their behavior and allowed it to continue.
Contributed to the outcome.
Yes.
Listen, even if it was merely in brain chemistry, if it was merely in axons and dendrites, even if it was just in the emotional, look, energy never goes anywhere. Energy changes forms. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so in that store on this day at this time, that energy was turning fetid. It was turning evil, and it was going a different way. And humans 1,000 years ago, or 2,700 years ago, or 20,000 or 2 million years ago, would have sensed it. They would have said, hey, listen, Ugluk is angry. We better
Yeah.
get out of the distance of the club swing. But we've evolved past that. We think that we're trying to outthink the situation, and I guarantee that the lobby looked like this, Brian. I guarantee that
Everyone's
everybody
staring at their
waiting in
phone.
line was doing
Yeah.
that. And
Not
so
even noticing. How many people didn't even notice it?
come on.
And,
And that bothered you so much, you just touched
I did.
the
Because
back of your neck.
it
Because
immediately
it
reminded me of a
drove the stress
situation.
hormone. Yes?
It immediately reminded me of a situation which I had forgot about when we started this, and when we said, hey, let's talk about this, which was like an hour ago. I know, sorry about that, but I got something tomorrow, but I wanted to record this now. It's there. The thing I forgot about was a similar situation where I was with other people I didn't know, standing in line for food, and there was some guy who was drunk, annoying. He was annoying everyone in line. He was annoying the people that worked there, and everyone was getting pissed at him, and he was obnoxious to the point where I just assessed the situation, looked around, and said, hey, you know what, man, why don't you go ahead and go in front of me? Go up there and just go right now. Hey, what does he need? This guy, got the attention of the people working there. And it switched from everyone being annoyed to like, hey, let's get on board and let's get this guy out of here and on his way so we don't have to deal with it anymore. And that situation versus escalating it and causing something like that, that simple thing right there is, I mean, that
you just epitomized the de-escalation strategy.
It's human survival, though. I'm not doing it because I'm a wonderful being.
Your outcomes-based training got you there, no matter what your motivation was.
Yeah.
Here's another incident where I don't care what the motive is.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? But your intent was pure, and therefore the legal, moral, and ethical thing to do at that juncture was to do the right thing for all the right reasons. And I'll tell you what, if there was the gift of time and distance, and I like to be able to change things. I'm Father Flanagan. When I'm on the ground, I can slow time down. And that's why I've gotten this far in my career.
Yeah.
Had I been in that situation, it would have been like, whoa, hey, don't need to turn this into a homicide. Everybody, free chicken, it's on me. I don't care if I'd have been fired. I don't care what. There's always a strategy to think it out rather than fight it out. There's always a way to talk it out rather than act it out, because people want their say, not their way. But what happened here is because we missed the signals, Brian. The folks on the ground missed the signals. It was inevitable. It had to turn to violence.
And that's the point I want to hit on, which is why I started with the question of how does a confrontation lead to a homicide in 15 seconds, and I wanted to make sure that's a clear answer of what can happen when a person experiences rage. Yes. Rage is that very primal reaction that and I think we define it as, you cannot control. So it's not anger. It's not something you can take a deep breath and walk away. Hey, you know what? Perform some exercise. When you get to that
point,
once
it begins, it's impossible. It has to run its cycle.
So that's how this is no different. This homicide is no different than a road rage incident that turns into a fight or a car accident, right? It doesn't always lead to death, but these are all situations that we see every day. And that's why I also threw in the point of, okay, well, you're telling me that science says, yes, this can happen. You can go from flash to bang in 15 seconds or a lot less. You can do that in a millisecond, in under a second, right? You can have that flash to bang of rage. So, but I think the point was, and two, why we brought it up and talked through it a little bit, was the point of this guy, and it's detailed in the story of he's walking around in there for 15 minutes trying to do this, which means people in there had time
to observe it.
Yes.
Draw a conclusion and initiate an action. Brian, the question would be, why did this guy use a knife? And my answer would be because he didn't have a gun.
Yeah, because that's exactly.
And then your question, why didn't he use a gun? It would be because he didn't have an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Once rage started, it was inadmissible to bring that in. Even if his pocket was empty, at this point, there was going to be a horrific beating that probably would have ended in a serious bodily injury or death.
Yeah.
Why? Because the brain's chemistry is so narrow focused. The laser versus the flashlight in this incident, you can't come off that accelerator. And your point is well taken, sir. The gift of time and distance. There was time to make an observation. Put down the phone, smell, look, listen, feel. And if it feels like something's going wrong, go to another restaurant, order out, do that Grubhub there's strategies, Brian.
Yeah.
Because if not, what's going to happen is we're going to look, and 3 people were killed on the streets of Chicago this weekend because of this and that and the other. If you don't have a coping strategy, you can't draw anything other than that knife. If you would have had the emotional maturity and some training and some education and some mentorship, then you could draw. I'd rather you insult. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I'd rather it turn into a fist fight than a homicide. But there was, and there still is, no de-escalation strategy, and that is society's responsibility in this next, millennia. Is coming to grips with the fact that technology hasn't taught humans how to treat other humans with respect and dignity.
No, and
To
that's
de-escalate.
yeah, and that's another good point, because I always like what can I do in that situation? What's the takeaways from all these? Is that one, it's not going to stop happening, the rage, and if anyone who's
Yep.
ever experienced or seen someone who is in a literal fit of rage,
Yep.
they're not
There's no
comprehending the
talking to them.
situation.
There's no dealing with them.
They are going to finish whatever it is they're doing unless you physically are able to stop them, kill them, whatever. But that when you see someone, for those listeners who have seen someone literally in a fit of rage going, there's no conscious thought right there. They're
Yep.
such a primal thing that can occur. That's inside everyone, and that's why I brought it up at the beginning. Is that the other side of that coin is we're hardwired that way for purposes of survival.
To survive
That was when
an austere environment,
yeah,
where there's very few cues and danger could come upon you rather quickly. That's why it's triggered in nanoseconds, is because all of a sudden when that saber-toothed tiger's on you,
yeah,
you got to be able to fight back.
and
But we didn't have a sufficient amount of mental acumen change that went along with societal change. You get what I'm saying? So this technology. I remember my first trip to Afghanistan, vice the second, and the second time everybody had a GPS and a phone, including Afghan villagers. That was
yeah,
unheard of, the first one. And
right,
Brian, you said that your experiences in Iraq were so kinetic in your first deployment,
right.
and all of a sudden you get out of that cycle and you go back, and now you're walking down those same streets with the same lenses of that
Yeah.
kinetic deployment that you had. So if you don't have a de-escalation
don't-
strategy,
right.
everything's going to be a threat. So we have to be able to control our own human performance. And the only way to control our human performance is to train the brain. That's the only way.
Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good spot there to kind of bring it in for a landing, unless you had anything else to mention on this specific incident. And
No, I have to apologize to the estate of Sigmund Freud, I think, but other than that, but I'm only going to do that if they approach me in writing. So
I think you're the first person,
Oh, no.
born
I do this
after
weekly.
him that said accused someone of stealing your work.
Disney scam artist.
prior
Steve
to you
Jobs scam. Exactly.
prior to you being born. That's a whole different podcast we could do. But the rage one, we'll talk about these incidents again, because they continue to occur.
And we're not making fun of this. Folks that are tuning in, Brian, I think they're smarter than that. They've got to understand that this is our gallows humor, our way of venting. Rage is absolutely something that can be trained to de-escalate, just like any use of force. The less I know, the more likely I'm use too much force. It's a fact of life.
Right. I'm always the less training or education or experience I have, the more likely I'm going to go primal, because that's all I have. Right.
Exactly. When I open a toolbox, I only got one tool.
That's what I was going to say. I only got that drill bit to drill into that PVC pipe, and that's
exactly.
it. I understand what that story's insane.
And after the 5th or 6th year, why not?
What
right?
you just? That is some backwoods hillbillies.
Back to you smoking a crack and
Yeah.
driving that Harley.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, look.
The unprotected sex and all the other.
We got to get it from somewhere. So just chasing that high constantly. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Please tell your friends about it, like it, share it. Don't forget that training changes behavior.
Hey, and don't forget the subscription drive. It's free. It's a button click.
Go to the website, arcadiacognerati.com, hit subscribe. We've got some stuff on there that you're going to want to be a part of. So get on there and get involved in the conversation. Thanks again.